So there I was in 4th grade. I was laying on the floor, just crying in tears. I had a teacher standing over top of me. Miss Taylor was asking me, Tim, what's going on? What happened? I'm looking up at her, afraid, terrified, trying to speak to her, and no words came out of my mouth. I felt like I was trapped in a ball with no words that could express the pain, the fear, the anxiety that I was feeling in that moment. Teacher picks me up, carts me off to my principal. Principal said the same thing. Tim, what's going on? What happened? What's wrong? I tried to talk and I couldn't. My mom came to me, picked me up, brought me home, and tried to comfort me. Didn't know what was happening. Didn't know why I was acting the way that I was acting. Sent me to school the very next day. Within minutes, my teacher comes to talk to me. Same thing. Fall to the floor, cry, tears, no words. I grew up in church. My mom did what she would, always do, would pray and give me scriptures. And so she put scripture verses in my backpack, my lunch pail, my lunch box. She said, if you ever feel the need to cry, you're scared, you're worried, read these scriptures. Armed with my scriptures, I go back to school and like clockwork, within minutes, Miss Taylor comes to talk to me. I feel the need to cry. I remember Psalm 23:4, as I will fear no evil. And yet I felt comfort in that moment. I still cried. I still was terrified. Didn't know what was going on. I was in a gifted and talented school. They thought it was the pressure. They thought I couldn't handle it. They kicked me out of the school. I went back to my former public school and felt like a failure. Felt ashamed. Didn't know why this was happening to me. And it didn't stop. And I struggled. I struggled for a long time. And it wasn't until the age of 28 where I looked back and realized that during that time in my life, I was suffering some significant trauma and abuse. And I don't hold a lot of frustration or anger or regret about my parents and how they didn't help me. But I do hold a lot of judgment towards the professionals who didn't see me. You see, there were school psychologists there were teachers, there were principals who saw a kid hurting. Instead of getting to know that kid, they judged him. At that age of 28, when I looked back at my life and figured out what was going on and what I needed and what I didn't have, it was in that moment where I decided that I wanted to be that professional who stood in that gap, who bridged that gap from where those kids are to where they want to be. I needed somebody. I'm not going to cry this whole time, so I apologize. And that's when I found the science of behavior analysis, and that's when I started going back to school to figure out what it is that I wanted to be. Fast forward many years later, I'm here today, where I'm the Chief Clinical Officer and where I get to create systems, develop resources and tools so that we all can be those professionals that see kids where they're at and bridge that gap to where they want to be. During my time in trying to figure out the stuff that I was working through, there's a psychologist named Viktor Frankl. It's a great book called A Man's Search for Meaning. And in that book, he talks about his experiences going through the Holocaust and working and living in these camps. And he talks about he who has a why can live for and bear with almost any how. It was in that moment when I was looking back in my past, I realized I had a why. I wanted to be that professional. I wanted to figure out how I could help kids go through difficult times in their life. But it was more like, how are we going to do this? How am I going to live out that why? And so like I said, here we are. At Centria, we're one of the largest ABA companies in the country. We have an opportunity to support thousands of kids We have the opportunity where technicians get to see kids on a daily basis and come alongside them in some of the most challenging times. It's our job as an organization to support those technicians and our BCBAs so that they can be those professionals that see kids who are struggling and come alongside them and support them. So let's rewind a bit. I was initially hired as the VP of Clinical Quality and Curriculum 3 years ago, a little over 3 years ago. I thought I had a lot of expectations of what I was coming into in the job. My first question I asked was, how well are we doing? If I'm going to be the Vice President of Clinical Quality, how well is our quality of care? It took 4 months to get some data out of care. Actually, it was ABA Advantage at the time, to even get some resemblance of if we were doing well or if we weren't doing well. And when I looked out and assessed the need, what was happening in our services, the BCBAs and RCDs that are here today will understand that our services that were being provided in Michigan varied from the services that were provided in Arizona to California. We had hundreds of different approaches to assessment and treatment planning. We had many different approaches to working with kids with interfering behavior, and it was somewhat of a systems mess. And when I think about being in this position and creating systems to support clinicians and technicians to be able to see kids where they're at, we can't do that effectively when everyone's doing different things with different sets of goals. I apologize, I keep looking at my phone because I have a lot of notes in my presentation that aren't shown here. So, this chaos that I kind of described is actually indicative of the industry that we work in. For those who don't know, the ABA industry is a very new industry. Started its rapid growth in 2014. We sit upon a lot of immature systems. When I ask the question what good is, there actually isn't a definition in our industry of defining what good is. There aren't tools, there aren't assessments, there are not ways in which we measure if good exists. On top of that, 50% of the BCBAs that work in our field started after the pandemic. So we work within an industry that's very immature, lacks systems, tools, and resources to define what good is, with a professional, large professional body of people who are brand new to this field. As an organization, we have to meet that need right there. If we want to be an organization that bridges the gap from where clients are to where they want to be, we have to figure out how to scale quality systems that support BCBAs that are new to the field within a system that understands clearly what good looks like. We talk about a why. If you read about Simon Sinek also talks about a just cause. And this is our just cause. We want to fundamentally transform the ABA industry, where artistic clients are the center of our care model. Their goals, their dreams, and their aspirations drive our care towards meaningful and measurable improvement in their quality of life through expanding their world. This is a fundamental paradigm shift for those that are not BCBAs. For too long, our industry has been about clinician-driven care. What the BCBA, what the clinician thought was best for the client, we acted upon those clients. And we did. We defined their goals. We told them what they were gonna do. We told them when they were gonna do it. And if they didn't, we forced them to do it. But when you think about the goals that I have and the goals that I want to achieve, it's not about forcing kids to do things. It's about seeing and coming alongside those kids. So the question is, where do we start? And where did we start? When I looked out across the organization and all these disparate practices happening, all these different ways about providing care, how to define care, what goals to choose, what assessments to use, I had to ask, where would we start? I made a lot of mistakes initially, and I had some false starts. We had this thing called Project Initial Impact. For those who are around in 2020, my boss at the time liked to come up with names for projects. And we had this Initial Impact project, which was the first thing we're going to do is define an assessment process for the entire organization. So every BCBA would do one process to assessment. We brought in leaders, many people are here today, to come and work for months on this project. It had the right goal. I think it was the right place to start, but it failed to launch. In the end, we were told that we couldn't roll it out. Lesson that I learned in that moment: if you're going to bring about any meaningful change, all decision makers need to be at the table making the decisions. And this applies to everybody, whether you're a center director, you work in intake, you work in recruiting. If you have an idea of something that you want to accomplish, you have to be able to bring everyone that's going to impact to the table to have a decision. No matter what great idea you have, if not everyone's aligned, it's not going to work out. Opening outcomes. Many people have heard a lot about our Foundations of Care rollout. I think probably very few know about opening outcomes. Opening outcomes was the initial idea that we had 3 years ago, where we were going to say every client who started care through a PFA and with SBT. We hired Greg Hanley, brought him in. He trained a number of people, some people that are here today. And we had some good outcomes, but it never went anywhere. We ran into a lot of impact issues. We had a model that couldn't scale because it was mainly supervising clinician driven. We had software impacts that we couldn't do. There was a number of things that failed. And though the goal was the right goal, the work needed to achieve that goal, we weren't aligned to. And this is when I learned another lesson. Agreeing on an outcome is not enough. You have to agree to the work that's needed to get it done. Across the entire industry, every ABA company says they believe in high quality care. Every ABA company says they're going to deliver the best services. But they're not willing to do the work to actually achieve those things. And so if you're going to achieve, you're going to set a goal out there, you're going to have to achieve the work that's needed to do that. John Austin, a mentor of mine, said most change initiatives fail as a result of not understanding that in every change initiative, I'm paraphrasing, there's a person. And in that environment, they're the ones that need to drive change. When I'm thinking about the change initiatives that we've rolled out and the ones that we struggled on and failed in, we failed to look at that area. An idea is great, but at the end of the day, if we're gonna roll out a change, it takes people, and it's supporting those people through that change. Let's talk about our intake work. Right now, we're rolling out this incredible new process for intake. We started with a goal, but then we had to agree on what are the things that we're gonna do. We had to partner with Shelly and her team to do the actual work to get it done. And I'm really proud of that work. When thinking about, let's go back to my presentation, when thinking about the how and what we're trying to achieve at Centria, one of the lessons that I've learned is that we have to speak less as leaders and listen more. One of the valuable things around team member support centers, we get to hear from our field in much more meaningful ways than we ever did before. As leaders, we need to listen. So when I think about what makes a successful organizational change for us and the things that we're trying to accomplish, there's 4 things. Our changes and the work that we do have to center around our client's voice. We have to have alignment across all of our organizational stakeholders and leaders. We need to provide meaningful and measurable improvement to the lives of our clients. And that improvement has to expand the world in which they live. I'm gonna talk a little bit more about these. Centering our clients' voices and rights. Some of you probably read our standards of care document. It was my very first assignment as a VP. And at that time, I was given a 300 and some page document and said, you need to get this out there. They've been working on it for, I think, 2, maybe 3 years. And it was a very difficult position for me to publish a document that I wasn't part of creating. I didn't really like the approach the document was going. But I had one idea. And one idea was if we could sprinkle in our clients' rights into that document. So I took an opportunity that was given to me to make an impact and center our standards of care document, which outlines all the practices of our supervising clinicians around the rights of our clients. When I was thinking about trying to create systems to where professionals see clients where they're at, I ultimately thought our rights are something that we should put in there. So our clients now, for those who haven't read the document, have the rights to a treatment by a competent behavior analyst. They have the right to a comprehensive initial and ongoing assessment, a positive therapeutic environment, programs that teach functional skills, services that directly impact their well-being, and the most effective treatment. I learned a lesson that whenever we get an opportunity, take that opportunity to leave your mark. After the standards of care document, I'm still left in the same position of like, what do we do? What do we work on? How do we, and the question ultimately comes like, how do we center the client's voice within our assessment process? Going back to the conversation I had around Project Initial Impact, at one point we had 180-ish different treatment plan templates. We had a number of different approaches that were being used. But the main driver of that approach was, what do the payers want? And how can we write a treatment plan assessment process to meet what the payers need? It was all about getting approvals. Largely, our whole system was developed off of DWIN and their process and what their treatment planning assessment process was. But if we're gonna center our assessment process around the rights of our clients, we had to shift that. Because at that point, our assessment process was centered around the goals of our payers. And so we set out to create one template, one way in which we can center the client's voice in our assessment process. We rolled out the Vineland to much pushback and disagreement. The Vineland, for those who don't know, is an assessment process that requires an interview to happen between the clinician and the family. It's ultimately a place to actually hear from the clients themselves on what they're struggling with, what their goals are, what they're able to do and not do. It's time consuming. And then sometimes our payers don't pay for it. But if we're gonna build systems that scale to support our clinicians to see clients where they're at, it's a process that we felt very valuable. After visiting some of our centers, talking to some BCBAs, at that time, some of them didn't even hear about the new assessment and treatment plan process. Some of them didn't know that we were requiring the Vineland. Many people didn't understand why we were doing the Vineland. I learned a significant lesson. That transformation is not a destination, it's a journey. And there's milestones along the way. You see, like, it's easy to get caught up in the resource center and think that like, we did it, it's done, it's good, it's out there. It's a lot harder to say that and then go out into the field and see that like, it's had no meaningful measurable impact on the lives of our staff. We can celebrate, cheer, job well done, but that's only the beginning when it leaves this office. Like, success is truly measured by the impact that we're having in the field, and that's gonna continually take iterations and feedback and listening. And if we like close ourselves off to that, we're not gonna get to the transformation that we need. Another area that we need when driving organizational change is alignment. Alignment is a continuous process of agreement across like key decision makers. This is ever present now as we roll our new org model out that has this dyad model within the field of operations and clinical. Because it's one day, on a Monday, you can agree to something, on Tuesday, and you might have a disagreement, or that agreement may go in different paths. And in order for you to stay aligned, it's a constant communication, constant decision-making process. I apologize, I feel a little scattered today. It's actually a much more pressure presenting to you all than a random group of people I don't know. And so I apologize if this is not as coherent as I wanted it to be. So when we're thinking about centering around our clients' voices and the assessment process that we rolled out, we go and we go to centers. We work with BCBAs. We traveled to many centers across many states. And what we continue to start to see was, despite rolling this assessment process out and utilizing the Vineland, that our clients and our clinicians and our technicians, they weren't really working on the goals that truly mattered. One of the most run programs in our program library is a program called Put Block On. ultimately no one gives a shit about putting a block on, and we shouldn't be running it at all. But it's the most run program. And so if you think about this idea that we wanted to center clients' voices in the assessment process, and we wanted to work on the things that truly matter to them, right? Like putting block on isn't it. I learned a lesson at that point, which is standardized assessments don't tell the whole story. That assessments are helpful and they illuminate, and they can tell us a lot of things, but it's not the whole thing that we want to be told. So from that, we've iterated to something called client aspirations. And clients' aspirations center goals around our client's voice. Client aspirations, for those who are not aware, are conversations that we have with the family and the client when appropriate, and we ask them, what are your hopes and dreams? What are the things that you want to accomplish in your life? What are the things you want your child to accomplish in life? They may be achievable through therapy, they may not be achievable through therapy, but they should function as a context for how we provide care. I want to think about creating systems that support clinicians and technicians to see clients from where they are and to be that person that bridges the gap to where they want to be. We also have to know where do they want to be? What do they have in mind? It's not a matter just of reducing this problem or getting them to do this. It's ultimately what is the life they want to live, and how can we as an organization help support them to achieve that? One BCBA, when we rolled out client aspirations, said, the family I'm working with is pretty professional in our meetings and like to review data, progress in our parent engagement meetings. Mom cried in our most recent meeting when we discussed aspirations. And when we met this last week, she definitely was sharing a lot more about their challenges at home. I thought while we had good rapport before, being able to let her guard down in a meeting and seeing that it was okay, it definitely has led to her being far more comfortable sharing when they're having a hard time. In order to see people where they're at, you have to build trust and rapport so they can have those conversations with you. When we come in and just have a set of boxes that we have to check, assessments that we have to do, and we don't create space for our families and our clients to actually talk to us about the things that matter, we're never truly gonna see them. The lesson I learned at this point was you have to be flexible. Not everything's gonna fit in a box, and you have to be able to learn and adapt and grow. So we have this assessment process where we run the Vineland, we have client aspirations, and it's great to have a big picture goals, but big picture goals aren't the whole story, right? What are we gonna work on here and now to get there? So we rolled out something called the monthly treatment priority. And the monthly treatment priority is an agreement between the clinicians, family, client, technician on what's the most important thing that we can work on right now to achieve this month that's gonna have a quality of life impact on the client and their family. The data's a little bit old, I apologize, but on average, we're achieving 50-ish% of the monthly treatment priorities that are going month over month. Here's a clean example from a family that we got feedback from. Client aspirations, parent says, when I was first asked about aspirations, I dreamed that my child could play at the park with my friends' kids. I never thought it would be true until last month when I saw him running with joy, going down the slide, and playing tag on the playset. That same client's monthly treatment priority 2 months prior was working on taking turns at the park. And the mom stated, when he was playing, it was so shocking to see him taking turns, which was a priority that we had worked on that last month. When you think about where clients want to be, where you want to be, where are the goals that we have that we want to achieve, there's a series of progressions of goals that we have to achieve to get there, and our monthly treatment priority is that approach. For about a year, our team worked on a framework. When we're thinking about creating meaningful goals that translate to meaningful therapy, we sat in a room, metaphorical room, probably a Google Meet, and we talked quite a bit on how do we create a system, knowing all the industry barriers that we've talked about, no standards, no definition of quality, a BCBA population that's brand new to the industry. How can we create a treatment planning framework that would support our clinicians to be that professional that sees our clients. We do what most Centria does, is we branded it the Two Wonders framework. And it's a treatment hierarchy that allows us to connect from really big picture goals to like what's happening in therapy every day. We learned a lot through this problem. I don't think it's on the slide, but I'm just gonna edit a bit. We learned quite a bit that it is really easy to sit isolated from the field and create things and come up with your ideal situation. It's a lot harder to actually accomplish and execute that across the organization. And if I'm gonna be candid, the things that I presented to you are all like well-meaning things that we're trying to accomplish, but things that we are not yet arrived at and doing really well in. The Do Wonders framework is that. Across the next year, we're gonna continue to work through this, but we have by no means achieved the goals here. I will share this, a quote from one of our clinicians. She was part of our pilot group for the Do Wonders framework in Pacific Northwest. My highlight of the process is actually seeing this process of how aspirational goals plays into treatment goals and program goals. As clinicians, we tend to get stuck in our box of curriculum-based assessments, i.e. put block on, and behavioral goals that we need to remember it goes well beyond that. I think once everyone gets in the process, we'll have a better overall outcomes for our clients. So then we asked the question, I asked my team, what happens if we just combine all four of these things? We have an initiative that centers around the client's voice. We have an initiative that aligns the organization. We have an initiative that has meaningful and measurable improvement and expands the world in which our clients live, work, and play. The question that I challenged Hillary was, could we actually scale a compassionate model of care that would truly develop our professionals to see, support, and intervene for those child that's metaphorically and also oftentimes crying out for help. Centered around clients' voice and rights, we did it. We have an assent-based driven model of care. We call it the foundational plan that we have effectively rolled out across the organization. In order to get organizational alignment to roll out our Foundations of Care initiative, we had to hire 24 people. For those of you who are trying to get Rex approved, that is not an easy task. 24 employees. We had to change the billable requirements for our BCBAs. We had to change definitions of caseload. We had to institute a clinical competency-based program. Up until this point, all of our bonuses have been based off of financial metrics. We had to hold employees accountable to clinical quality and clinical outcomes, which is not something that we had done up until this point. And lastly, we had to invest millions of dollars into Care Connect to make this come about. Around meaningful and measurable improvements, we had to improve the clinical practice for 350 BCBAs through this initiative. We had to scale a practice with the one goal that we want to decrease client interfering behavior, injurious, assaultive, aggressive, dangerous behavior of our clients by 90% within the first 30 days. To set the context for y'all that don't know the data, some of our clients engage in this behavior for 3, 4, 5 years. Some of our clients that we support right now and have supported since 2015 and 16 have engaged in interfering behavior since the start of their care. And it wasn't until we rolled this initiative out that stopped. The question is, could we scale a model that really expanded the world in which they live? We have countless stories right now from this initiative where parents report to us things that they never thought would happen with their clients are happening. Clients are going to dinner for the first time. I don't know about you, I have a 4, 5-year-old, and a 13-year-old. My 4 and 5-year-old, I just keep them locked up at home. I would never take them out to dinner. But we have a client that we've served, and as a result of the service that we're providing, their family's free and comfortable and enjoys taking their child out. We have done over 1,700 foundational plans for our clients. That's remarkable. No one else in the industry does this. As of last week, we've done what's called a practical functional assessment. We've done 418 of those. No one in the industry does this work. This is life-changing work in an assent-based model. And assent, for those who don't know, it's very similar to consent. But consent is like a legal term that requires you to be an adult or a guardian to consent to services. Our approach now is assent-based, which means our clients are actively choosing to participate in services with us. And if they don't, we honor that. And similar to, our goals around being like seeing clients where they're at, being that person that's there to care for them, this model delivers on those goals. Some data for the clinicians out there. Of our 400 PFAs that we've done, we've analyzed 319 of them. 96% of those were effective. 99.69% of our PFAs were safe. For those who don't know, when you're working with children that engage in interfering behavior, it can be dangerous. In the old assessment tools that we would use, the assessment would actually try to get clients to engage in the behavior to figure out why they were doing it. And so if a child injured themselves, headbutt, hit people, the previous assessment approaches would try to evoke the situation for that to happen. If you imagine me in 4th grade crying on the floor, the former assessment process would try to get me to do that again to understand why it was happening. We know so much better now, and our PFAs don't require that. We can understand a child, a client, in so many more positive ways that don't require any more trauma. The average length of this assessment is 20 minutes. It doesn't take much time at all. Compared to, I think the range is up towards a couple hours for the other approach. A team of people driven towards a just cause will endure and achieve more than you can imagine on your own. When I think about what we're actually achieving through our Foundations of Care rollout, it far supersedes any goal that I've ever had. I had a vision, but ultimately I have a team led by Hillary, our directors of functional assessment and treatment, that have created an outcome that is best in class, something that we can be proud about. And for me, thinking about my goals of creating a system that creates clinicians to be professionals that see clients where they're at, that gives them the tools to bridge the gap from where clients are to where they want to be, I'm very proud of this work. Part of this work, talk about meaningful and measurable improvement. We provided around, this is a little specific, 10,436 hours of mentorship to achieve this goal. When you think about the company you work for, you should be proud, because companies don't do this. When I talk to you about the immature systems, the lack of support for brand new BCBAs in this industry, most companies just throw them out there and let them figure it out on their own. The fact is that we've invested this many hours of mentorship and will continue to mentor our BCBAs is something that's creating systems so that our BCBAs can thrive to support our clients. One of the last lessons I've learned and continue to learn is transformation requires execution. Ideas are sexy. It is, I can sit in a world, last night, I was having a glass of whiskey, smoking a cigar, talking with David, and that is my, what we call HRE, happy, relaxed, and engaged. It's an ideal situation to where I can just sit down, talk about ideas and things that we can do. But ideas don't mean anything. Execution is what matters, right? I can remember my very first month on the job. I got an email from someone, and they said, you know what we need to do is we need to create this in behavior analysis we call a token economy, an incentive system for technicians. It's a great idea, but how are you going to execute that for 3,000 techs? Who's going to do it? How are you going to manage it? How are you going to sustain it? How is it going to have the impact? And so I say that because it's easy for us all to come up with here are the things that we need to do. But the question is how are we going to do it? I think more importantly, in the third, fourth quarter of the initiative, do we have the strength to sustain through it? I feel some of a fraud talking about this client because some of the clinicians that have worked with this client are here. We had a 13-year-old client with nowhere to live. We had a 13-year-old client recently that was living in a hospital, in and out of an ER, in a residential placement. Foster care wouldn't take him. And DWIN, the Detroit Wayne Medicaid reached out to us as a way for us to help. A team of people here worked on that case and worked with that client. Like I said, he couldn't be placed in a foster home. He was living in an ER for 6 months, multiple comorbidities, PTSD, and had gone without care for 2 years. Because every time we tried to put a tech with this client or someone tried to put a tech with this client, they couldn't do it. Our Foundations of Care work has fundamentally put this child, this individual, in a place for them to thrive. The graph that you see here, a little old data, it's somewhat changed. These are the number of incidents of injurious behavior that occurred. That phase change line is where we started our intervention, and you see the impact after that. More importantly, what you don't see on the graph is the story of his life to where he was able to be placed in foster care. He's not living in an ER. He actually attends one of our centers now and receives care there around a group of clients. When I think about expanding the world in which our clients live, that is expanding the world. This kid went from a place where he had no home to an environment where he could be loved, cared for. Yeah.
Shout out to Jerry.
Where's Jerry? There's Jerry. Jerry led that work. We had a 7-year-old boy engaging in 250 instances of aggression a day, injurious behaviors a day. Our team was notified that this was happening. And more importantly, we were notified that the BCBA didn't agree with the Foundations of Care approach, didn't think that would be effective for this client, and ultimately was putting this client into harm. When I thought about the organizational alignment, and one of the questions I had was could we hold BCBAs accountable? This was challenged at that point. We had a BCBA that was meeting all of our financial metrics and not providing care in a way that aligned to our values, and ultimately putting our client in harm. And we eventually fired the employee. And what's awesome about this story is that this phase change line shows when we implemented the Foundations of Care protocol. The fact is that this client went from engaging in 250 instances of dangerous behavior a day to 0 consistently across their time with us. When you think about, and I think about me being in 4th grade, crying on the floor, asking for help and no one willing to help me, and a teacher just doing the same thing over and over and over again, not being seen, heard, or valued, it gives me a lot of hope to know that we have a system and an approach that can train and support our clinicians to see clients, give them what they need, and put them in an environment where they don't have to engage in the things that they've been engaging in for so long. We have a long way to go. A lot of the things I've talked to you about are nowhere near being done or successful. Like I talked about, transformation is a journey, not a destination. And we are bridging the gap between where the client was and where they want to be. Some words from our clinicians. Before coming to Centria, I almost left the ABA field after 13 years. Getting mentorship and learning all about the Foundations of Care has made me regain my passion, and I'm 1,000% happy with my move to Centria. The mentorship team is great, and I love this approach to ABA. I'm so ready to continue learning and implement SPT with all of my clients. The last lesson I learned is leadership matters. There's a part of behavior analysis where you study systems design. And I think a naive person looking at how to construct a system and how to put incentives in place and trainings in place and feedback, you can start to reduce people to widgets. And the fact is people aren't widgets. They're incredibly powerful people that if you provide the right support, accountability, and coaching, our team can do countless and incredible things. And this work is that. Our foundational plan wasn't even part of the goal that we set out. It was a creation of our team, and it is as a result are impacting the lives of clients across all of our states that we serve. At that center, as I was talking about, of change is a human, their history, their experience, and ultimately their behavior. But if we want to continue to transform and continue to work towards achieving our cause of transforming the the industry of ABA, it requires structure change, process change, incentives, and feedback. Many of you know, and some may not know, that we're rolling out an entirely new operating model in the organization. This new operating model is taking in what was once overseen by our operations team to splitting this up to where we have a clinical team and an operations team. By doing so, and we call it the dyad model, by doing this dyad model, we're able to create systems and structures and processes to continue to support not only our clinicians and technicians in the field, but our operations team in the field. When I think about my goal of transforming the ABA industry and our goal of transforming the ABA industry, and the goal of like creating systems that continue to support our professionals to see our clients where they are, and with the tools to bridge the gap to where they want to be, our dyad model is ultimately the next step in that goal. So for those who don't know, moving forward in the next couple of months, all of our supervising clinicians are going to report to a new role called a Director of Clinical Services. That Director of Clinical Services is solely going to be responsible for ensuring that every client is achieving the goals that they have for themselves. Every Director of Clinical Services will report into a new role called Area Director of Clinical Services. And then every Area Director of Clinical Services will report into another new role, which is called a Clinical Vice President. When I think about my goals that we've laid out, when I think about the opportunity that we have as an organization to truly be a leader in an industry that needs a leader, this organizational structure change is a must. What I'm proud about is, as an organization, up until last week, we've had like month over month growth, and we've continued to be in a place financially that we are more stable than we ever have been. And I'm proud that despite that, we're leading in a direction to make changes to continue to improve the practices that we're providing to our clients. No other company in this industry would do this. Every other company in this industry has and will continue to try to make their company more operationally efficient, more financially stable, and client outcomes are secondary. As an organization, we're putting clinical quality first, and we're putting a lot of money towards ensuring that that's happening. I'll leave with this. In all of this, I've learned that to lead is to grow. And I'm not the same person that I was yesterday. I'm not going to be the same person tomorrow. And as an organization, we need to continue to take that approach. That every day is an opportunity to get better. Every day is an opportunity to support a technician to a better degree, to hear a family who needs support and answer them to a better degree. I ask you, take a moment with me right now and imagine a world where we are the leaders, where every client that comes to us is seen, valued, and heard, where every BCBA is effective and loves their job, where technicians come to Centria because they want to work for a company that values them and gives them the opportunity to make the difference that they want to have. Imagine a world where that fourth grade student is seen and heard, where that child who's injuring themselves in home and calling out for help has a professional that can come and support them, see them, help them, and guide their family through that. We're an incredible company, but on top of that, we have an incredible opportunity and an incredible mission to provide services to more kids than ever before in an effective, safe, and dignified manner. And everyone here plays a huge part in that. So while we go through this transformation, while we go through this organizational shift, I ask you to continue to think through those kids who need to be seen. Think through how your job impacts those kids being seen. Think how you support our BCBAs and our technicians so that those clients get the services that they need. Thank you, everybody.